The public was not allowed to see Fred Astaire's covert farewell dance for years. In 1979, at the age of 80, the Hollywood icon arrived on the set. Seeing the king of dance in a low-budget science fiction program was unexpected. The footage was hidden by the studio. He looked so elderly and weak that it made him feel ashamed. However, many are shocked to see it once it was released online. You'll be devastated by the tragic cause behind his final actions, which weren't on a glamorous stage. On May 10, 1899, Frederick Austerlitz was born Fred Astaire in Omaha, Nebraska. His parents were immigrants of German and Austrian descent. From Linz in Upper Austria, Friedrich Emanuel Austerlitz, his father, was employed at the Storz Brewing Company. Despite having German ancestry from East Prussia and Alsace, his mother, Johanna Galis, was born in the United States. They altered their last name from Austerlitz to Astaire in order to distance themselves from the Napoleonic Battle of Austerlitz. Adele was 3 years older than Fred's older sister, and have a natural gift for dancing and singing. Seeing something unique in her, their mother decided that both of their children should pursue careers in entertainment. Initially not a big fan of dancing, Fred began to imitate Adele's moves as he watched her rehearse. In time, he surpassed her skill level. When their mother saw that he was also talented, she took a risk. In order for the kids to receive professional training, the family relocated to New York City in 1905 when Fred was 6 years old. They lacked money, connections, and assurances. Things became considerably more difficult after the transfer when their father lost his job. Still, Fred and Adele went to the Alvini Master School of the Theater and Academy of Cultural Arts to study acting, dance, and music. In order to become a more varied performer, Fred also learned to play instruments like the clarinet, piano, and accordion. At Keyport in New Jersey, the siblings made their stage debut at a small theater that same year. Toe Dancing Novelty, Juvenile Artists Presenting an Electric Musical was the title of their performance. For one part of the performance, Fred wore a top hat and tails, for another, he dressed like a lobster. The mixture seemed peculiar, but viewers liked it. They soon began touring the Midwest, the West, and the South as part of the vaudeville circuit. Although there were difficulties, their unique blend of dancing and comedy made them stand out. Because Adele experienced a growth spurt throughout her adolescence and became taller than Fred, their performances were odd. Complicating matters further were stringent restrictions against child labor. The family stepped away from show business for 2 years to avoid issues. They were even more polished when they got back. Under the tutelage of renowned instructor Aurelio Cocchia, they learned new dance forms like ballroom and tap. While Fred's technical skill improved, Adele's inherent appeal continued to win over spectators. He moved with timing, precision, and fluidity. With time, he began to stand out in a way that Adele was unable to equal. Despite their developing talent, they had difficulty breaking through in show business. They were young and inexperienced, so agents were reluctant to book them. Prohibition regulations forced Nebraskan breweries to close, which made it harder for their father to find employment and increased their pressure to be successful. In spite of everything, they persisted. Their footwork became more precise and their performances more accurate as they continued to refine their routines. By 1911, they had resumed their regular performances, garnering recognition and capturing the hearts of audiences across. When Fred and Adele Astaire made their Broadway debut in 1917 with the patriotic play Over the Top, which was presented during World War I, spectators quickly recognized their charm, humor, and impeccable dance moves. The energetic stage presence of Adele was a fantastic match for Fred's choreography. The musical Lady Be Good, which featured songs by George and Ira Gershwin, was their major hit in 1924. Musical theater underwent a sea change with this production. The jazz-influenced style it offered felt new and elegant. The Gershwin brothers' tunes complemented Adele's contagious enthusiasm and Fred's deft footwork. They were commended by critics for their comedy and grace. At this point, they were among Broadway's most thrilling sibling acts. They performed in a distinctive manner. A few dancers could not match their ability to blend grace and comedy. Adele frequently stole the show and had a natural talent for comedy. Fred, however, made their dances stand out with his meticulous choreography. He demonstrated his technical mastery and knew just how to bring forth Adele's best qualities. Among their most well-liked exercises was the runaround. Before disappearing into the wings, they would race in circles around the stage while linking arms like cyclists. It was easy and fun, and audiences adored it. They had an indisputable chemistry. In the realm of musical comedy, critics frequently referred to them as the most elegant and endearing young dancers. They were not just a Broadway success. With another partnership with George and Ira Gershwin, Funny Face, they brought their skills to London in 1927. Fred was at the height of his tap dancing abilities, and the show was a hit in the West End. Writer Robert Benchley referred to him as the world's best tap dancer by 1930. They starred in another success, The Bandwagon, in 1931, demonstrating that their appeal was not limited to the US. Both high society members and theatergoers enjoyed their performances. Their magnetism also drew in British monarchy. However, things changed after 27 years of dancing together. In order to wed Lord Charles Cavendish, the son of the Duke of Devonshire, Adele gave up acting in 1932. An era was coming to an end. Fred had to take center stage by himself after dancing with his sister for almost his whole life. Although the change wasn't easy at first, it gave him new opportunities. That same year, Gay Divorce became his first significant solo hit. A romantic dancing technique that would eventually come to define his Hollywood career was introduced in this show. During this period, he also worked with Cole Porter on Night and Day, which would go on to become one of his most well-known performances. Arriving in Hollywood in 1933, Fred Astaire was eager to establish himself. However, his initial screen test at RKO Pictures wasn't a success. It was harsh criticism. Unable to act and sing. Rather balding, has some dancing ability. His career might have been doomed by such a review, but Astaire refused to let it happen. His signer, producer David O. Selznick, was also not quite persuaded. In a memo, he acknowledged that Astaire had a certain something, despite his huge ears and poor chin line. His charm is so great that it shines through this miserable test. He would quickly become one of the most adored celebrities in Hollywood thanks to his charm. In the same year, he made his debut movie appearance. He danced with Joan Crawford in Dancing Lady after being rented by RKO to MGM. He was noticed, even if it wasn't a major role. Flying Down to Rio was the film he was cast in after returning to RKO. He wasn't in the lead. He was billed fifth. Everything changed, though, as he appeared on screen. He was described by critics as being very likable and as a dancer who stays in a class by himself. Audiences adored him. The new star in Hollywood had just been discovered. His collaboration with Ginger Rogers was another new development in that movie. Their combined dance took center stage in Flying Down to Rio, even though they weren't the main attraction. When they danced with their foreheads touching during their karaoke performance, it became an immediate success. Initially, Astaire had no interest in reuniting. After years of performing on stage with his sister Adele, he desired to work alone. He even wrote, "I will not have it," to his agency. To be paired with her or anyone else, I didn't enter any photos. The studio, however, pushed for more since the audience demanded it. Astaire and Rogers co-starred in 9 films between 1933 and 1939, including Top Hat, 1935, Swing Time, 1936, and The Gay Divorce, 1934. The chemistry between them was effortless. Their rituals seemed to work like magic. Their attractiveness was been aptly characterized by Katharine Hepburn. She gives him a sexual appeal after he gives her a lesson. Not only were their flicks well-liked, they were enormous hits at the box office. Among the studio's highest-grossing productions at the time were 6 of their 9 RKO musicals. Their impact, however, extended beyond ticket sales. Dance in movies was revolutionized by Astaire and choreographer Hermes Pan. Impressive footwork was not the only factor. The narrative was being told. Every action, every routine, every step had purpose. Everything that made them brilliant was on display in 2 of their most famous movies, Swing Time, 1936, and Top Hat, 1935. Astaire portrayed American dancer Jerry Travers, who develops feelings for Dale Tremont, in the film Top Hat. Performed by Rogers. Classic songs by Irving Berlin, including his Top Hat, Tails, and Cheek to Cheek, were used in the movie. Using his cane as a gun, he mimicked the act of shooting down a chorus line in one of the most well-known scenes. He found it difficult as well. He normally favored lengthy, uninterrupted shots, but it required several takes to get it perfect. The movie was an enormous hit. Later, the Library of Congress acknowledged it as a culturally significant film, and it was the second highest-grossing film of 1935. And then it was Swing Time. For many critics, it's their best movie together. Notable songs like Never Gonna Dance and Pick Yourself Up were among them. It was one of the hardest routines they had ever filmed. It was perfected after 47 attempts. One of the most unforgettable dance sequences in history was created by the emotion, perfection, and pure work that went into each move. Astaire was a stickler for detail. He was in charge of everything, not just the performance. He helped with choreography, had an impact on music composition, and ensured that every move was properly captured by the camera angles. In contrast to contemporary musicals that frequently use fast cuts, he thought that dancing should be captured in full body shots with minimal editing. He needed to have perfect tap sounds as well. Following Roberta, 1935, he began re-recording all of his taps in post-production. Nobody else was doing that in Hollywood. He put just as much effort into his rehearsals. He began his preparation months in advance and needed 6 more weeks to practice, starting at 9 in the morning. Till 6 p.m. each day. When Ginger Rogers was practicing in high heels for a long time, she joked about how uncomfortable her feet were. Fred Astaire continued dancing and found new partners who could match his style after his illustrious stint with Ginger Rogers. His work on You Were Never Lovelier with Rita Hayworth stands out as his most memorable partnerships. 1943, The Picture, which starred Astaire as an American dancer who was mistaken for a covert admirer of Hayworth's character Maria Acuna, had all the beauty of a traditional Hollywood romance. However, their chemistry was what really set it apart. Frequently referring to Hayworth as his favorite dancing partner, Astaire praised her innate grace and ability to match his footwork. The film's rehearsal process wasn't always glamorous. They had to halt whenever a procession went by as they were rehearsing in a room above a burial home. For two of Hollywood's most graceful dancers, it was an odd environment, but they managed to make it work. They appeared to perform with ease when the cameras rolled. Astaire also co-starred with Judy Garland in 1948's Easter Parade, a movie that nearly fell through. Gene Kelly was set to play the lead, but he hurt himself before the movie started. Astaire took over since Kelly was not there. After taking a little break in 1946, he came back for this production, which was a huge success. Steppin' With My Baby and other memorable songs made the movie the highest-grossing musical of 1948. Garland and Astaire looked like a perfect match on screen. His elegant approach was counterbalanced by her warm, vibrant enthusiasm. The situation behind the scenes was more complex. The movie saw leadership changes, and Garland battled personal problems. However, the finished movie turned out to be one of MGM's most cherished musicals in spite of the difficulties. In the middle of the 1940s, Astaire believed he was prepared to leave Hollywood. He made the announcement of his retirement during the filming of Blue Skies, 1946, and even selected Puttin' on the Ritz as his parting song. Retirement, however, was short-lived. He retreated 2 years later for Easter Parade, and he went on to star in some of his most well-known movies over the following 10 years. Among them was Vincente Minnelli's 1953 film The Bandwagon. Astaire portrayed Tony Hunter, a waning celebrity attempting to reinvent himself. At the time, it was a position that fit him. Hollywood was evolving, and Astaire needed to demonstrate that he was still a star. Dancing in the Dark, a duet with Sid Charisse in Central Park, was one of his most famous performances in the movie. Astaire, who was 54 at the time, nonetheless danced with the same elegance and dexterity that had made him famous decades before. Funny Face followed. In 1957, he danced with Audrey Hepburn. The movie combined romance, fashion, and the allure of Paris. A photographer who transforms Hepburn's persona into a model is portrayed by Astaire. Their connection worked despite the obvious age difference between them. While letting a look take center stage, the choreography was created to accentuate Hepburn's delicate manner. His ability to change with the times was demonstrated by songs like Let's Kiss and Make Up. Not only were his roles in these movies comebacks, but they were also reinventions. He was demonstrating his ability to remain relevant despite the changes in Hollywood. Astaire wanted to find a new avenue to spread his passion for dancing outside of the movie industry. He helped establish the Fred Astaire Dance Studios in New York City in 1947. With the retired film executive Charles Kazanov Sr. Bringing professional dancing tuition to the general public was the aim. Immediately successful, the studio quickly grew into a worldwide franchise. There are already more than 250 sites across the globe. Astaire personally contributed to the studio's program design, ensuring that everything adhered to his exacting standards. Great dancers, in his opinion, are trained rather than born, and he wished to ensure that everyone could learn. His curriculum included Latin dances like salsa and cha-cha as well as ballroom classics like tango and waltz. His studios, in contrast to conventional dance schools, provided a welcoming atmosphere for students by combining personalized instruction with group practice. Throughout his career, Fred Astaire dazzled spectators with his dance skills, but in the 1960s, he took on a new task. His transition from musicals to tragic roles was unexpected for a guy so closely associated with Hollywood's heyday of dancing. His most significant contribution to this change was made in 1974 with The Towering Inferno. John Guillermin directed this disaster movie, which had an all-star cast, such as Paul Newman, Faye Dunaway, and Steve McQueen. Harley Claiborne, portrayed by Astaire, was a charming con artist with a heart. In contrast to the polished, self-assured roles he frequently portrayed, Claiborne displayed vulnerability and depth that surprised viewers. Because of the impact of his performance, he was nominated for his first and only Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Although he lost, the acknowledgement was long overdue. The Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor and the BAFTA Award for Best Actor in a Supporting Role went to him. The Towering Inferno earned nearly $203 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing movie of 1974. There was a lot of tension, action, and fire, but Astaire's part brought something unique. In a spectacle-based film, his role added genuine feeling. Particularly in the sequences where his character laments the passing of his love interest, played by Jennifer Jones, critics commended his portrayal of sadness. Some believe that the industry's recognition of his influence on film was a result of his nomination, which went beyond this role. He showed that he could compete even in a genre that wasn't his forte. Next to a few of Hollywood's top personalities. This was hardly the first time Astaire has been reinventing himself. He created history in 1958 when he hosted the one-hour television spectacular An Evening with Fred Astaire, which was shown live on NBC on October 17. It was not your average variety show. The first major television special to be captured in color on videotape was this one. This was revolutionary at the time. And Astaire. The show included music from the Jonah Jones Quartet and David Rose's orchestra, and he performed with Barry Chase, whom he later referred to as one of his favorite dance partners. The show was a huge success, winning 9 Emmy Awards, including Best Single Performance by an Actor. The response was so positive that it led to 3 more specials in the years that followed. He was always a perfectionist and made sure it was a production to remember. The show, which Astaire co-produced and Bud York directed, combined dance and music in a novel and thrilling combination. It also represented the expanding entertainment industry. Chrysler became a significant sponsor after realizing the potential of television and showcasing their vehicles in the show. Astaire, who is now 59, shown that he is still a powerful force in the business by embracing new genres and never ceasing to astound audiences. His iconic dance scene from 1951's Royal Wedding, however, was the one performance that best exemplified his capacity to push the boundaries of performance. Astaire starred in the Stanley Donen-directed MGM musical You're All the World to Me. He would appear to dance on a room's ceiling and walls throughout this routine. It was unprecedented for audiences. A system of revolving barrels was used to provide the illusion. It was a huge steel building that rotated while the camera and cameraman were fastened to rigs that followed its movements. The props and furniture were held in place by magnets or bolts. A staircase appeared to be easily floating from the floor to the walls and then up to the ceiling thanks to this intricate arrangement. For his 1986 music video, Dancing on the Ceiling, Lionel Richie reproduced the song since it was so innovative for its time. The dance number is still regarded as one of the most avant-garde in movie history. Another revolutionary moment was produced by Astaire and Hermes Pan with the shadow dance in Swing Time, 1936, 15 years prior. Special effects provided the novelty this time. Pan observed how the stage lights created Astaire's numerous shadows during rehearsals. That gave rise to a thought. What if Astaire danced with more than one version of himself, rather than just his own reflection? Filmmakers employed optical effects to make it come together. First, there was Astaire dancing in front of a blank screen with shadows created by bright lights. Following their separation, these shadows were optically quadrupled and captured on film. The pre-recorded shadows were then mixed with live Astaire dancing video. Despite the 3-day shoot, the finished product was well worth it. One of Astaire's most remarkable performances was the shadow dance. Hermes Pan was nominated for Best Dance Direction at the Academy Awards as well. As a dancer, Fred Astaire was more than that. He experienced passion, heartache, love, and even conflicts about his legacy in his off-screen life. Astaire wed Phyllis Livingston Potter in 1933. She was a socialite from New York who had a small kid from a previous marriage. A long-time connection began when they casually met at a golf luncheon. Together, Fred Jr. was born in 1936, and Ava was born in 1942. Astaire's career was at its height during these years. His roles in Swing Time, 1936, and Top Hat, 1935, characterized Hollywood's golden age. Although his dancing appeared effortless, it was influenced by his level of happiness. He was stable because of his family life. Everything then changed in 1954. Phyllis was found to have lung cancer. At the age of 46, she died. There was a broken stare. At one point in 1955, while filming Daddy Long Legs, he almost quit the part. It was impossible for him to execute without her help. He remained alone and concentrated on his business and kids for decades following her death. However, there was still another surprise in life. Astaire remarried in 1980, when he was 81 years old. He married Robin Smith, a professional jockey who was 45 years his junior. They bonded over their mutual passion for horse racing. Smith even featured on the cover of Sports Illustrated in 1972, making history as the first female jockey to ride for Alfred Gwynne Vanderbilt, Jr. Their bond was genuine, even though they were of different ages. Until Astaire's death in 1987, they remained together. He passed away at the age of 88 in her arms. Astaire had interests outside of Hollywood that not many people were aware of. He had an obsession with golf and horse racing. He kept a close interest in the sport, owned stables, and went to races. His passion for horses influenced his entire life and was more than simply a hobby, taking him all the way to Robin. It was equally vital to play golf. He performed whenever he could, whether at social gatherings or set breaks. His passion for the game was so great that he met Phyllis at a golf event. Fred Astaire danced on movie screens all of his life. He moved with ease and took small steps. He was Hollywood's model of grace for decades. However, he wasn't in a classic musical when he made his last appearance dancing on screen. The space-themed science fiction television program Battlestar Galactica included it. On January 28, 1979, the episode titled The Man with Nine Lives was shown. Astaire was 80 years of age. He played a smooth-talking scammer posing as Starbucks' long-lost father, Captain Dimitri Chameleon. For a man with a reputation for elegance, it was an unexpected part, but he was perfectly suited. He added a bit of vintage Hollywood charm even in a futuristic context. It wasn't Astaire who pursued the position. His grandkids were avid fans of Battlestar Galactica and frequently discussed it. He wondered at their eagerness. Rather than merely observing alongside them, he contacted producer Donald P. Bellisario to inquire about a role for himself. Bellisario gasped. It is stated that he said, "I will write a 2-hour episode around you, Mr. Astaire." Even though the show was only an hour long, it allowed Astaire to do what he did best, dance. Initially, he was uncertain. Years have passed since he last danced on screen. He was slow because of age, and he didn't want to let anyone down. However, as the cameras rolled, he and Ian Jeffries, who played Sir Res Blassie, walked onto the scene and did a final dance. In contrast to the spectacular numbers for which he was renowned, the routine was brief and straightforward. Nevertheless, it was full of grace. He was a legend because of the grace in every movement. Establishing her own position in Hollywood history, Jeffries became the final woman to dance with Elvis on screen. Astaire donned an ascot, which he probably picked out himself, as part of a space-themed outfit for the scene. Despite being a minor element, it was significant. He stayed true to himself despite the future settings and spaceships. Not to revive his career, he appeared on Battlestar Galactica. It was for his grandchildren. It was how he entered their world and brought them joy. Because of this, it was more than just a TV moment. His audience was being bid farewell, and the art he had perfected was being quietly bid farewell. Fred Astaire died at the age of 88 on June 22, 1987, 8 years later. It was pneumonia. The world lost a man who had permanently altered entertainment, in addition to a dancer. The tributes poured in right away. Ronald Reagan referred to him as a legend. He was perfect, according to Mikhail Baryshnikov. His longtime opponent and friend Gene Kelly paid tribute to a man who went above and beyond. Astaire's songwriting partner Irving Berlin called him irreplaceable. However, Astaire himself gave the most heartfelt homage. He turned to his wife, Robin Smith Astaire, in his last moments and asked for nothing. Telling his supporters how much they have always meant to him was what he requested her to do. He could not help but think of those who had stood by him, those who had watched him dance, and thought, if only briefly, that magic existed. Astaire's name continued to be a source of dispute even after his death. A digitally modified image of him dancing was used in a vacuum cleaner commercial in 1997, 10 years after his passing. Fans were incensed. A gaze had expressed his desires quite clearly. In his will, he had specified that his image may not be used for commercial purposes or for unapproved biographical depictions. "I have no particular desire to have my life misinterpreted," he once declared. Robin, his widow, put a lot of effort into preserving his legacy. To prevent businesses from utilizing his likeness without his consent, she brought legal action. But he wasn't the only one at fault. The topic of digital recreations of dead artists became more widely debated as a result. Some contended that it was a means of bringing legends to a wider audience. For some, it was a breach of their memory.